Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council Planning Committee. I'm Councillor David Bretherton, and I'll be chairing this meeting. May I remind everyone this is a meeting in public and not a public meeting. Only members of the public who register to speak are allowed to do so, and I'll call in to speak during the appropriate agenda item. The meeting is being held in our office in Abbey House, Abingdon. Committee members are here in person, but obviously the speakers are able to join remotely. This system allows councillors who are unable to attend in person to contribute to the meeting, but only councillors who are present in the room are allowed to vote. The meeting is being streamed live on the council's YouTube channel for public viewing. For speakers and members of the public who have joined remotely, please ensure that your microphone is muted and that your camera is off for the duration of the meeting until you are called to speak. The Planning Committee is a decision-making committee of the council. It is important that a set procedure is followed. All committee members have received a full report on each planning application, either on paper or electronically, and it should be noted that committee members and officers may be using electronic devices for reference throughout the meeting. For each application, we'll first hear from the planning officer, followed by the parish or town council, and then objectors, supporters and local members. Each group will have 5 minutes to speak to the committee, after which members may ask questions of the speaker. The committee then asks questions for clarification of the planning officer. The committee will then debate and vote on the application. Councillors wishing to ask a question or participants are asked to indicate this by alerting myself or officers by raising a hand. Voting will be by show of hands. Members, please raise your hand clearly and keep it raised to allow the count to take place. If it is unclear how members are voting through a show of hands, I'll ask the clerk to undertake a roll call of those present and how they are voting. A few housekeeping announcements. In the event of emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is the corridor immediately to the right of this room, and then go to assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. The Democratic Services officer present will assist you. Can everyone please ensure that their mobile phone is switched to silent or switched off during the meeting? Members of the public who wish to leave the meeting after the application has been heard are welcome to do so by the front door of the reception. When the meeting is finished, I will ask for confirmation that the live stream has ended. At that point, please leave the meeting and make your way out of the building, remembering to sign out as you leave. That was the chairman's announcement. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Higgins and Councillor Norman. Councillor Powell is attending as substitute for Councillor Norman.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting to adopt and sign as a record the Planning Committee minutes of the meeting held on the Wednesday, the 16th of July 2025. For agreement. Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. To receive declarations of disposable pecuniary interest, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, or any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. See no. Urgent business?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Next item is public participation. We have a public participation list. I've agreed to one additional member for that public participation list, and it's for David Fisher, who's an objector to the first application. I think there's something went wrong with the SODC email system, so I've agreed that to let him speak. So we will go to agenda item 7, I think. Yeah. Agenda item 7, which is land off Lower Road, Garsington. Oh, it's 40. Land Lower Road. Development of battery energy storage system, and the planning officer is Chris Hill. So welcome, Chris. Oh, I should have welcomed Andrea Powell, who's substituting, and is the first time she's been at this committee meeting. Thank you. Welcome, Andrea. Oh.
Good evening, members of the Planning Committee. The application for consideration is for a 100 megawatt battery energy storage system, commonly referred to as a BESS BESS, along with the associated access, landscaping and cable connection. It is proposed to be located within a parcel of land referred to as land off Lower Road. On the screen are pictures of the site as it currently exists. This is looking south onto the field. This is looking southeast to the corner of the field. This is looking northwest towards Cowley substation in the distance, with the B480 running on northwest on the right-hand side. This is looking east away from the sites, and this is looking directly north away from the site along the road. You will see from the location plan that the site edge red includes the B480, as this would be the route for the cabling connection to Cowley substation. My report details the site characteristics in detail. Notably, it is approximately 1.2 kilometres away from the edge of Cowley substation, 0.7 kilometres southwest and downhill of Garsington, and northeast of Tute Baldon and other settlements. The whole of the site sits within the green belt. The site plan shown on the screen shows the arrangement of the compound. The proposed development would be a 100 megawatt battery energy storage system. The bulk of this development would be modular battery units. Infrastructure to support these batteries, as well as the access, concrete surface, storage areas, and safety equipment would accompany this. This plan shows a contextual elevation looking northeast. The elevation is split in half. The first half in the middle shows the hedgerow, going from left to right here, shows the hedgerow, proposed trees at their full-grown height, and compound substation elements. The bottom elevation continues this elevation as a whole and shows the main area of the compound and batteries. More contextual elevations are included within the submission. In addition, the development would introduce a scheme of planting, including trees, hedges, native scrub, woodland, and wetland planting. The arrangement of landscaping is shown on the screen. Both national and local planning policy is supportive of renewable and low carbon energy development. The government paper Clean Power 2030 Action Plan identifies battery energy storage systems as a necessary piece of infrastructure for achieving a net zero carbon electricity system by 2030. The development plan does not allocate sites for renewable energy or low carbon, and sites have to be considered against the whole policy framework. The site is within the Oxfordshire Greenbelt, and this is covered in detail in the committee reports. Under the NPPF, were a site to be considered grey belt, very special circumstances and a consideration of openness would not be necessary. The committee report concludes that the site cannot be considered grey belt as it would result in development in close proximity to Oxford, resulting in an unrelated and isolated development and altering the pattern of development where there is none. In terms of openness, the proposed development is considered to be harmful, both spatially and visually. The development will be screened by the existing, and in the medium to long term, proposed planting. The proposed trees and hedgerows would therefore reduce the number of glints used in a longer time frame, but they are unlikely to significantly reduce the visual impact from higher landscape viewpoints. My report also details the impact on the landscape. The proposal would introduce structures into the open countryside that would be industrial in appearance. Tallest elements, namely the transformer and high-level disconnectors, being 6.76 metres tall, would be of a significant height and visibility from certain vantages. Whilst the batteries and their infrastructure are not so high, averaging between 2.35 to 2.65 metres, they would be significantly greater in number and coverage. Despite the schedule of planting and conclusions of the landscape visual impact assessment, it is this council's opinion that the proposal would introduce tall structures of an industrial character into a predominantly open and highly visible field within the countryside. There are no other technical objections to the scheme. The NPPF and Policy Strat 6 advise that very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. This section of the report concerning very special circumstances concludes that the LPA does not dispute that the development is both supportive infrastructure for renewable energy, that it combats climate change, and it assists in UK energy security, would also provide biodiversity net gain. However, the harm to the landscape, as well as the harm to the greenbelt, including openness and urban sprawl, is significant. As such, it is concluded that the tests for very special circumstances are not met. Planning balance section of the committee report considers these factors and other material considerations. The committee will also be aware of the Cowley substation battery energy storage scheme recently approved at committee and the Culham Science Centre battery energy storage scheme granted its appeal. These are shown on screen. These have been considered within the committee report, and whilst they are material to the decision-making process, it is considered that they are materially different to the scheme presented for the reasons outlined in the report. Overall, I conclude that the proposed development's benefits are outweighed by the substantial harm to the openness of the greenbelt, both spatially and visually, and that it undermines Purpose A of the greenbelt. The development will also cause significant adverse effects to the open landscape. It is therefore recommended that the Planning Committee refuse Planning Permission for the reasons included in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We'll come back to you later. Okay. Our first speaker then is Mr. Fisher.
Right. Is it there?
Okay, come over there, please. Yeah. And you have 5 minutes
Right.
to speak for the moment you start speaking.
Right.
Oh,
Good evening. Yeah, my name's David Fisher. I live at Kingfisher Cottage, 1-2 Borden, Oxford, and we directly overlook the proposed planning application. I wish to raise my objections for the proposed application for a BESS 100 megawatt facility by the land at Lower Road, Scarsington. At no point have we been consulted or included in this proposal, bearing in mind that this will have a significant impact, being one of the nearest properties as shown in the planning application noise assessment, page 22. The planning application states that there will be minimal noise impact. No noise assessment was carried out at our boundary, only at Lower Road, Garsington. As our property on the edge of 2 Borden is on an elevated position, the 4-metre acoustic barriers will give absolutely no protection from noise pollution caused by the 100 cooling fans located on the individual battery containers. This will also be the same for the surrounding village of Garsington. The proposed landscaping scheme is totally inadequate. The facility will range from 3-metre high containers and a 7-metre transformer mast. The few trees that are shown on the plans will take over 20 years to reach height, so will not obscure the site or mitigate any noise pollution. The 50 megawatt BESS facility, which is already in place at the Cowley substation, can actually clearly be heard within the neighbouring area, even though it is surrounded by a mature woodland, a woodland of mature trees. Surely the planning committee would need to have a site visit to the Cowley substation to have a clearer understanding of the noise generated from the cooling fans at a BESS when in use. The additional 200 megawatt BESS planning application, which has been given the go-ahead and located within 500 metres of our property, would give the noise from a total of 300 cooling fans and will undoubtedly have a detrimental effect on our mental health and residential. Due to the elevated position of our property, we can clearly see the flooding of the fields that will surround the proposed site, as illustrated by the pictures taken between January and September 2024, and which have been supplied. Over the past 5 years, there has been an increase in the level of flooding. According to the planning application, data due to a forecast suggests that there is little evidence that it would flood. Beg to differ on that one. How can this planning application possibly be approved to allow lithium storage batteries to be placed in a field that regularly floods and will cause more flooding by concreting of an arable field? I would like to refer to the 2 most recent lithium-ion battery fires. The first one on the 28th of March 25 in Cirencester at a solar and storage facility, only 2.5 years old. One of the lithium-ion batteries caught fire, spreading to 2 battery containers. Toxic fumes filled the air as residents were advised to shut all windows and doors. On this occasion, the fire service were able to bring the fire under control in 7 hours. On the 19th of February, whilst under construction in Tilbury, Essex, a battery storage facility caught fire and took 24 hours to bring it under control. I would also like to refer to the thermal runaway at the Orsted BESS, Carnegie Road, Liverpool site that took 59 hours to extinguish, and this was on a 20 megawatt site. The resulting water runoff from the Orsted BESS contained hydrochloric acid as a product of reaction between the battery cells and water contact. If this scenario was to happen at the proposed development site, the impact of the contamination of this highly toxic corrosive chemical would be extremely harmful to the environment, the ecosystem and food production in all the surrounding fields, drainage ditches and the River Tame. according to the best incident database, the last fire at a best was on the 16th of June 2025. Toothborden and Garsington lie within a conservation area, and as such, any planning applications have to be justified as to cause minimum impact on their surrounds. This proposal would represent inappropriate development and would be harmful to the greenbelt. I strongly object to the planning application and suggest it is turned down. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Richie, has anybody got any questions for Mr. Fisher? Councillor Sadler.
You mentioned noise pollution.
Yes.
How you said you're quite close to the.
We're 2 fields away from we're literally the first property at the top of the hill on the way from the Watlington
So that's
Road.
the road that's opposite the site.
As you come, we look as you go up the hill into Toothborden, we're on top of the thatched cottage. You could actually, in the first picture, on the first image, you could just about make out a property at the top of the hill. And we look down onto that one.
I'm just wondering about
With
this noise pollution, because obviously
we're sort of
okay.
here, and we're 2 fields away from that one. Yeah, 1, 2. Yeah, we're sort of just in the corner here. We can. I mean, what my worry is that there's already a 50 megawatt BESS facility, which is on site or adjacent to the Cowley substation. Maybe it's a slightly different because we walked down there because when it became into operation, wondered what on earth the noise was. It sounded like a helicopter hovering over sort of Cowley or something, but realised that it just didn't. It was just this constant drone. I mean, it sort of sounds. I would say either a helicopter, or you could say a washing machine on the spin cycle. But obviously, because it's cooling fans just circulating, it just doesn't ever stop. Obviously, this time of year, bedroom windows open at night. That's all you know, and obviously the subsidence of traffic noise. That's all you can hear. You know, in certain weather conditions, say when it's foggy or damp, obviously heavier air transmits traffic noise and noise pollution. I mean, and we can hear it quite clearly. Obviously I didn't speak at the last meeting. I thought my comments might have been picked up, but obviously I was one of the first objectors, and my comments didn't actually make this committee meeting. So I was sort of really concerned, that we're any further. Obviously missed my opportunity to speak at that one. Maybe it made no difference, but my concern, more than even the visual, is the noise, which we're being told is minimal, but it's not. I think that's not to be the case.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. I think we'll take that up later on. Anybody got any further questions? No, thank you very much for your presentation.
Right.
Our next speaker is Stephen Goff, who's from First Way Energy, who is a supporter for him. Mr. Goff, you have 5 minutes from the moment you start speaking.
Good evening, members. My name is Stephen Goff. I'm the Planning Director with Net Zero 21 Limited, speaking on behalf of the applicant this evening. It is with some regret that I find myself speaking against this officer recommendation and the recommendation of refusal within the report. A report which lacks objective balance in the manner in which it presents the main issues to you. Unfortunately, the words of this report do not match the fine words of this authority's adopted climate change action plan. In a number of instances, the report is simply incorrect. So let me highlight a few examples of that for you, if I may. First of all, straightforward matter, the report relates to 16 representations of support. There are, in fact, 33 representations of support on the council's website. Turning to the need for the battery system. So the officer has made it clear that in terms of principle, the report understands the support for the scheme, but nevertheless, it goes to some extent to undermine the need for this system by reference to material published by Ofsted in the Ofsted Ofgem in the early part of this year. Now, the fact of that is that the Ofgem report relates to overcapacity. Overcapacity is being addressed by NESO, the government agency, who are currently reviewing the connection queue, and there will be a removal of a substantial number of sites from that queue, which will free up capacity, and none of us will know the outcome of that until the end of this year. The other points to mention on this, because the report does reference both the Culham Science Centre site and the site adjacent to Cowley substation, what the report doesn't tell you is that both those schemes are transmission schemes. Their purpose is to transmit energy to the UK-wide energy transmission grid. The purpose of the scheme proposed by this application and the subject of the contracted grid connection with Scottish and Southern electricity networks is to supply electricity to the local area via the 132 kV network to the residents, schools and businesses of the South Oxfordshire area. Transmission and distribution have very different functions. They are not competing for capacity. Yet on this basis, the officers in the report downgrades the contribution this scheme makes to clean energy to a minor positive weight in the planning balance, which substantially underestimates the value and the weighting which would otherwise be attracted by a development like this one. This on its own numbers fundamentally undermines the recommendation in front of you. Landscape impact, a lot has been made of this, again in the report, and quite rightly. Policy DES 9 supports renewable low carbon energy provided there are no significant adverse effects. The report makes reference to significant adverse effects, but the landscape officer's response to consultation makes no reference to significant adverse impact anywhere in the response. Your landscape officer clearly doesn't support this application, and that much is clear. But nor did they support the Penzo power application adjacent to the Cowley substation, yet the officer's report on that occasion found its way to recommend approval. And nor did they support the BESS application adjoining the Culham Science Centre, which an inspector has recently approved on appeal. Both these schemes are substantially larger with much greater impact than that of our own, yet in both instances, both schemes were deemed to be acceptable and approved. The officer's approach to our application is not consistent with these decisions, and it overstates the harm, which we say is moderate to minor. On grey belt, your officer has already commented on this, and officers clearly don't agree that the site is grey belt, yet they arrive at this conclusion with reference to a background paper to the emerging local plan, which doesn't consider our site. It considers a much wider area, including a range of land parcels which perform very different functions in the greenbelt. This lack of specific analysis undermines your officer's conclusions on grey belt. Were the site to be considered greenbelt, we're into considering harms against benefits and whether very special circumstances may exist. Now, it's not surprising the officer's report concludes that they don't exist, by the way in which the positive benefits of renewable low carbon energy infrastructure have been downgraded in the officer's report, and the impact within the landscape has been overstated within the report, as I just mentioned.
30 seconds left.
This lack of objective analysis in the report has led to flawed conclusions which are out of kilter with the now consistent findings of appeal inspectors on many sites in the Greenbelt across the UK, including the one recently approved within this area. Members, you are entitled to arrive at a different conclusion to that recommended by your officers. This is an energy storage scheme with a contracted grid connection. It would be impossible for me to overstate the importance of delivering increased connected battery capacity in the UK, essential to delivering net zero, literally keeping the lights on within your South Oxfordshire.
Okay, that's your 5 minutes. Thank you.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Liberty, have you got any questions?
The last speaker was talking about problems with existing sites, both fires and noise.
Yes.
What have you got to say on both those points that might make our minds slightly more correct?
So nothing in that I'm about to say is seeking to make it appear that the previous speaker is not speaking his truth. However, we have submitted quite a volume of modelled data on noise, which has gone straight to your environmental team, and they have had a long time to consider that data and concluded that the noise emissions from this development are not at a level that would result in any nuisance or concern to any occupied properties within the vicinity the site. In other words, they don't object and they're happy with its findings. We have to rely on that. They are the experts. They've had the submission from our experts, and that is their conclusion. On the question of battery safety, again, there is a volume of materials supporting this application. We have an outline battery safety management plan submitted. The local fire authority have not objected on the basis of fire safety. There are examples where battery fires have occurred. The Carnegie Road, Liverpool, for instance. That incident predated the current National Fire Chiefs Council guidance that we're all working to now, together with data from around the world. A lot has changed since then. The safety of the systems now are a world away from Carnegie Road. Interestingly, the scheme that was mentioned, I think, in Thurrock, that scheme, where there was a fire during testing, all the safety protocols on that scheme worked exactly as they were designed to work. And there was no resulting harm to anybody, no resulting harm to health and safety. And the fire brigade, because they were following the agreed protocols, got the incident under control. So in terms of safety, this scheme is an exemplary standard in terms of battery safety, and that information supports the planning application.
Just one quick supplementary question. Coming back to noise, and that does seem to be a significant issue here from a smaller existing plant that is, I believe, part of the substation.
Yes,
And there's only 50 fans there. How many fans would there be here?
Well, each battery container would have its own integral cooling specification of what exists at the carrier substation, or indeed what the source of noise was, which clearly disturbed the previous speaker. The proprietary products which are available now, which this site would use, the batteries themselves are a self-contained piece of equipment. So the embedded technology is within the container itself. So the cooling and the venting and the way that noise is baffled within the construction of the battery casing is all part of the certification that comes with that product. It's delivered to the site as a completed item. It's not built on the site. So it's already gone through that safety and noise testing before it gets on site. So I'm not sure whether I'm comparing apples with apples because I don't know what's at the Cowrie substation, but certainly in terms of these batteries, there is absolutely no suggestion that there would be any noise problem with any resident or any occupied building within the vicinity of the site.
So, Councillor Gordon-Creed.
Thank you, Chair. Do this, because the technology in this area is moving at a pace, so you said that these come encased and as units that are already in situ, so to speak, in terms of what they need. Have they been road tested previously? Like, what's the history of them in other countries, other sites, in terms of their safety?
Yeah, the straight answer is yes. There's a misconception really about batteries of this nature, in that they are in some way not regulated. The vast proportion of regulation of these batteries actually takes place at the manufacturing stage. There is on-site modelling, which we have done in support of the planning application, to determine how and if the neighbouring properties are affected. But there are two main drivers really for how these pieces of technology are tested. One is the global insurance industry, and the other one is simple funding. And a battery energy storage installation at this scale would receive neither if it did not comply with every stringent requirement of it throughout its life, from the day it's manufactured through installation, through operation, to the end of the 40-year period. If it didn't meet those exacting standards, it simply wouldn't get insured and it would not receive funding. Now, bearing in mind these batteries are £1 million each, any operator is going to make sure the compliance with those safety requirements to satisfy insurance is absolutely as it should be.
Thank you.
Councillor Dragon.
Am I right in saying on the purpose of this battery storage is to store the renewable energy that's generated from things like wind turbines and solar?
Short answer to your question is yes. In the transitional stage, it will not be exclusively that because we are in a period of transition.
Okay. Could you explain then why this proposal isn't adjacent to a renewable energy generating site such as solar or wind, and why it has to be put in the middle of a completely open space in the green belt?
Sure. So there is no requirement, as in technical requirement, for a battery, a grid scale battery installation like this one to be located next door to either the generator of the energy, a solar farm or whatever it may be, or indeed the grid connection point, as in a substation. The reason why this location has been selected for this planning application is a result of the multi-layered site analysis and site finding process which we go through. And that process itself includes not just the availability of connection capacity within the substations available, but it looks at whether land ownership is available. So we do a very extensive search of ownership and whether landowners are happy to treat with us in terms of a battery site. And it then drops into a very detailed planning analysis in terms of impacts, which then leads to the planning application. So as a result of all that, we have satisfied ourselves that this, standing on its merits, is a good site for this purpose.
So would I be right in summarising that you've chosen a site because the land is cheap?
No.
And you can get, we just said it was because you couldn't get the landowner to buy it, to sell it.
What's your take back? I didn't say that. What I said was we carry out an extensive search of landowners and we work out which landowners are prepared to treat with us and which aren't. We can't compel most landowners to make their land available, and many don't for all kinds of reasons. But land ownership is only one of the instances that we look at in the extensive search exercise to find an appropriate site.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you. I was also going to ask the question about the reason for location, but the other point is the long red line that goes all the way up the road and back down here. Could you just describe a little bit what is involved in building that connection?
Yes.
What sort of disruption and what is the process of actually connecting the site to the substation?
So that red line, which on the plan over my shoulder, I think describes the whole width of the lower road. It takes into account the width of the highway. That certainly won't be what is required to install a cable connection to the Cowley substation. It will be a typical trenching exercise, which a framework contractor who is identified as being appropriate for works within the highway in this location will carry out. And they normally carry out the trenching exercises in a sort of sequential approach. It won't be the whole of the red line affected in one go. It will be a progressive installation of a cable that will be on a huge roll. The cables themselves are not that big and the trenches are not that big. So where possible, those trenches will be installed within soft verges. If the highway needs to be affected, then road closures and things like that will be managed in a way to minimise impacts on road users. And that would only be undertaken in conjunction with an agreement with the Highway Authority. But all of that link that you see on the plan is within the public highway.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Sutton.
Sorry, just want to come back to noise
Yes.
again, because it was mentioned by the previous speaker. And I know a couple of people have asked about it. You mentioned that the noise levels were deemed acceptable.
Yes.
The levels were deemed acceptable. Do you know what that level is in terms of decibels?
No, I don't. I can't give that to you tonight. It's a very, very involved report, as I'm sure you'd appreciate, but I can't give you the decibel number, for instance.
So we don't know whether it's greater than the sound of the road highway that's nearby, or
It is within an acceptable range, and without looking at them, I would ask your officers to advise you on this. We know we have the acceptance of your environmental health team as consultees to the planning application. Beyond that, I think I would rely on your officers to comment.
because I know you mentioned about the landscape officer and his report, but it does refer to acoustic fencing and discrepancies within the plan. So that was part of their reason for the objection.
The landscape officer's consultation response relates to the acoustic fence in respect of its visual appearance. And like I said in my 5 minutes, I don't dispute at all that the landscape officer takes issue with the scheme. My point is that the harm which the landscape officer attributes
He doesn't say
to
visual, he says acoustic fencing height.
Yes,
So
it's a visual assessment by a landscape officer. It's nothing to do with the acoustics.
Okay.
Can we?
yeah, okay.
One question I've got for you, because right at the start of your speech, you said you thought it was grey belt. Given that the government don't know what grey belt is, can you tell me why you think it's grey belt?
Because we don't believe, and again, this is all documented within the supporting material for the planning application, but we don't believe that the contribution which the site makes to those critical reasons for which greenbelt is designated, we don't believe that contribution is a strong contribution. The one which appears most frequently in the officer report is the contribution to restricting what would otherwise be uncontrolled urban sprawl. This site is approximately 1.5 kilometres from the boundary of the city of Oxford. It performs an almost negligible role in relation to restricting uncontrolled urban sprawl. And there are other reasons within that analysis where we say the definition of grey belt actually applies to this site. It's a definition which has now been through the appeal process many times, and inspectors have found grey belt on sites far more remote than this one for the same reasons.
I think I can't see any more questions. So thank you very much for your presentation and time. And thank you. I hope we've learned something. Okay, the local councillors, ward councillors are not here. I don't see them online, so I've not heard from them. So we'll go straight back to the planning officer. I'm sure we've got lots of questions to the planning officer. One of our speakers talked about fire and noise. Can you like to comment on those?
So on fire, the applicant is correct in the sense that the application is accompanied by use the correct term here, outlined energy storage system safety management plan as well as the fire strategy plan. The application was also consulted with the Oxfordshire Fire Service, who declined to comment. However, in the event an application was to be given permission, there would be conditions pertaining to fire safety, and that would be consulted again with the actual fire service. And again, the applicant is correct in the sense that numerous schemes such as this one have been granted elsewhere across the country, and they are subject to quite strict regulations. So in that regard, fire wouldn't be seen as a significant issue, not a matter that's taken into account in terms of the planning balance. On noise, I have just popped open the noise impact assessment, which does look at a worst case scenario of the battery energy storage system operating 100% during the day and night, so both discharging and charging simultaneously. They've also taken into account a conservative 10 decibel reduction for an open window, and then they've looked at the closest sensitive receptor. And then overall, they've come to a conclusion there'd be an absolute volume level of 34 decibels, and that's within 5 decibels of the ambient background sound levels. And therefore, the environmental protection officer concluded that there was no cause for concern in terms of noise impact arising from the.
Thank you. We get the questions from the committee. Councillor Gordon-Free.
Chair. First speaker talked about flooding. And flooding doesn't seem to be deemed in a flood zone. However, there has been flooding, according to the speaker. I haven't seen the evidence because we didn't get those, but apparently there is some.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, yes. So I just wondered about the flooding basically because it is right on the edge of the brook, and it will impact all the concreting will impact the runoff and the flooding in the area. And I just wondered, the EA has suggested a sequential test, and I wondered if that happened?
Yes, so the EA made the recommendation that the local planning authority consider whether we should carry out a sequential test. The application during the course of the latest consideration had an amended red line. This was to exclude the actual areas that, following the amendments to the flood zone maps earlier this year, means that flood zone 2 and 3 are not included in the site. The environmental agency initially had some concern with the submission in terms of hydraulic modelling, and that was amended again as part of the actual submission. And the environment agency eventually reached a conclusion of no objection, subject to us deciding whether a sequential test was necessary. As the application site doesn't include any flood zone 2 or 3 inside the red line, it was deemed that a sequential test wasn't necessary. We also have comments from the lead local flood authority and the drainage officer, who are both satisfied with the proposal. And finally, just in terms of flooding on the site, there is a drainage system on the site as part of the application, which was considered by those consultees. So the overall conclusion was that there would be no impact in terms of flooding or surface water management on the site.
Councillor Topping.
Christopher, obviously read the whole of your report with great interest, and I think that you went through the stages of how you reached the conclusion that this was not a grey belt, and equally that special circumstances did not apply. I see the position of this site as being perhaps the most important factor in reaching your conclusion not to recommend this application. Could I ask you again just to summarise the principal reason in your mind for why this site does not comprise grey belt, and equally why special circumstances don't apply, just so that we have absolute clarity?
Yes, so that's kind of a double-ended element, in the sense that the very special circumstances took consideration. Well, in terms of the grey belt, it was determined it wasn't grey belt because of the fact that we think it would contribute towards urban sprawl and an impact on openness. Urban sprawl being purpose A of what Greenbelt delivers. And that was made in consideration of the, I get the exact thing of it now, but the Greenbelt study assessment that was published last year. And that describes this site being within parcel 15A, which is a relatively small parcel, which to the south and to the east, there's areas called Broad Area 5 and Broad Area 6, which cover significant larger areas. So this site sits within parcel 15A, and that site is specifically described within the Greenbelt study as positively contributing to purpose A of the Greenbelt in terms of preserving urban sprawl. That was the reason why it was determined to not be grey belt.
And was this an independent report that came up with that?
Yes, it was. I forget the name of the company. It's inside of the actual in my committee report. It mentions the company. They carried out the assessment externally of us. They're a very respectable company.
I'd say it's supporting evidence to the joint local plan.
Yeah.
And then just on the matter of why very special circumstances don't apply, that was in terms of the actual the undermining of purpose A of the Greenbelt, and then also looking at the potential impact on openness of the Greenbelt, and those two overriding factors and the impact of the landscape as well, which is technically a separate matter, were deemed to outweigh the potential benefits of the scheme.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Powell, your question?
Yeah, thanks. So I was disappointed nobody from Garsington's here, actually, because I did want to ask about the neighbourhood plan and what consideration you looked at when there's mention in here of the views, the protected views within neighbourhood plan. Could you just give us a little bit more background on that, please?
Yes, so there is a protected use, especially from, I believe, St Mary's Church, the name of the church, which is obviously kind of on the south side of Garsington. We did consult the heritage officer, who very specifically looked at that particular issue. They were minded that whilst there might be glimpsed views of the actual proposal, that they would be relatively minimal to the setting of the church itself. So whilst it would have some very minor impact, it wouldn't have an impact that would give rise to a cause for an objection. So they did not object to the application in heritage terms. So that was obviously considered against the neighbourhood plan policy in of itself. So whilst it is acknowledged that there may be some glimpsed views, it wasn't deemed to have an adverse impact on the setting.
And sorry, is the neighbourhood plan recently made?
From memory, yes. Bear with me, I can have a quick look, but I'm pretty confident it is. That's the name of the plans, 2024.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think we've exhausted the question, and so we now need to go for a motion which we can support. Can I say at this point that Councillor Beer, as he was late, can't take part in this debate. That Councillor take part in the vote. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to propose a motion.
Councillor Dragonetti.
Following agree the officer's recommendation to refuse admission for the reasons set out by the officer of that says inappropriate development in the green belt, and there's an adverse and visual impact on the landscape.
Okay, is that seconded? Yes, thank you, Councillor Gordon-Tree. Do you wish to speak now?
No.
No. Well, I've got a debate then. Is there any debates? I don't see any debates. I'll go back to Councillor Gordon-Tree to speak.
Well, I mean, this is, it is, there's no question we need more energy storage. The energy of central government at the moment is to say yes to everything currently, if this goes to appeal. However, looking at it, it is going to be a great big lot on the landscape, regardless of mitigation, of this greenbelt area that is protected and deemed to be greenbelt, not grey belt. It's
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Dragonetti. Just someone.
Yes, well, really, there are, based on the officer's recommendations to refuse, there are, as Chris has pointed out, there are no special circumstances that would justify this proposal in the green belts, and there's I think it's very unusual. We come across a recommendation like this, and so I think this has got it absolutely right in this case.
Okay, right. So we have a proposal for refusal based on the officer's recommendation. All those in favour of refusal, please show. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7. All those against it? 1 abstention. 1 abstention. So that is refused. Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 8. I'm just going to get a glass of water, all right? Right, agenda item 8. Planning officer is Mark Solomon. Welcome, Mark. I haven't seen you for ages.
I
I
was here for a very long time and then I was absent for a while, which is nice.
Yeah, I met the Mark Collins show about 2 months.
Nice to see your faces again. Sharing. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the redevelopment and extensions to 6 to 8 High Street to provide new retail units and 9 new flats. This application is referred to Planning Committee as South Oxfordshire District Council are landowners to the car park to the rear of the site, part of which falls within the red line area of this application site. Should be noted that Tame Town Council do not object to this application, and that is the only reason that you want to come to committee. The existing frontage of the property will be redesigned and the single larger retail unit at ground floor subdivided into smaller commercial units. The upper floors of the frontage already accommodate 4 flats, which would be retained and remodelled, and an additional flat would be provided at first floor level above. To the rear, it is proposed to demolish a large part of the existing building, which was formerly accommodated by a supermarket and adjoins an alleyway. Immediately to the rear of the new commercial units at the front of the site, it is proposed to create an open air area with a courtyard and landscaping onto which the commercial units would face. To the south of this proposed courtyard area, in place of the demolished building, it is proposed to construct a new 3-storey building. This would accommodate commercial units on the ground floor and residential accommodation on both first and second floor, each with individual balconies. The proposal would also allow for the widening and enhancement of the existing alleyway beside the site, including the provision of new commercial units and flats facing onto it. Covered cycle and bin stores would be provided for both commercial and residential uses, and new planting is proposed to help enhance the new courtyard area. In short, officers are satisfied that the principle of the development and the design and form is considered acceptable. The application has not been met with any objection from the council's specialist officers, with support from urban design, heritage, drainage, ecology, environmental health, and forestry teams. OCC Highways also do not object. It is important to note again that Tame Town Council did not object to the application. A few letters of objection have been received by nearby residents. Their concerns relate to the size of the new retail units and them being potentially left open and empty, concern that the development is an overdevelopment of the site, and concerns over access for pedestrians during the construction process. Officers do not consider the development to represent an overdevelopment site. It would efficiently use the available brownfield land, and the retail interest has been considered by our economic development team with no objections. The treatment of the footpath will be covered by planning condition, which requires details of how traffic and pedestrian movements will be managed during the construction process. I recommend that planning permission is granted this evening, subject to the conditions outlined within the report before you. Officers do recommend a small tweak to the foul drainage condition number 15, which would change the trigger for when the details need to be submitted to allow for demolition to occur before the submission and agreement of foul water drainage details. This would be consistent with how we worded the surface water drainage condition as well. Thank you. I didn't quite get through to all the pictures, but I think Tom's going to scroll through and show you the context of the area.
Yeah. I think we've all got our reports, which are, so we're almost tough. So I don't know what the officer's done who actually photographed it.
What's that? Way all rubbish. Oh wow.
They've done it on scales.
Yeah, apologies, I didn't know that.
I tried to show my wife last night. I can't show you.
It might be easier to see them online.
We had a problem a few months ago. And I was able to sort it out. It seems like we've gone back. Yeah. Right, sorry. I'll just complain about the standard of the report. Not the report, but the standard of drawing within the report, which are looking pretty awful. Right, okay. Our one speaker is Neil Perry. Oh, it's via Teams. He's over there, looking at us.
Good evening, Chair.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes for when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. I won't take much of the committee's time. Merely to say, on behalf of the applicant, we'd like to thank Tame Town Council for their diligent interaction in this application and their support and their feedback. Similarly to officers, it's a really good example, I think, of a scheme that's come forward where everybody has tried their very best to deliver the best possible solution for this site and the wider community. So our thanks, and I'm merely here to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you for your time.
One of the comments is about the retail units. How confident are you that you can let the retail units?
There's been a number of interested parties already. There was an extensive exercise which the officer's report does talk about, and the Economic Development Officer has also commented on, whereby the applicant and their agents have sought for some time to see uses for the current site. But this size of unit in this location is just not required anymore in terms of the marketplace. And as such, that's the reason why we brought forward a scheme which offers much greater flexibility and smaller units. So we haven't removed the ability to have a larger unit at the front of the site, but we've allowed it to be subdivided, and then the smaller retail units to the rear. And that is what all the research that has been undertaken demonstrates that is the most viable way to actually bring this site back into use.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tobin.
I only have one question. It was a reference in Mark's report to a Burbage plot.
Burgage.
A Burbage plot.
Burgage. What is a Burgage plot?
It's the historic.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's basically the way the land was historically divided and described, as in front to back, and that is there's historic references throughout town. One of your, actually, our heritage report was written by the person who wrote it for yourself back in the day, before we jumped the fence. So the studies that were done, so there's historic grain evidence of Burbage plots, but not anymore on this site. So it's just an historic reference.
right.
Councillor Sandler.
Can I just ask about? I mean, it's a town centre location. That's clear. But I'm just not clear on the parking that you've got in the area. I can't quite see it from the plans. I might be missing something.
The public car park is sat behind the site. So
is that owned by the site then? That car park?
No, it's your site. It's owned by SODC. The site does have a number of designated sort of use spaces, but the site is an SODC site and it's a public car park.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So they get allocated parking space. I'm just a bit concerned about the residents.
There are some allocated spaces that did come with the site, but it's a public car park and it's a car-free scheme essentially. So there's no spaces effectively for the new units. It's a public space. It's right in the centre of town. You know, there's cycle spaces and it's highly sustainable. So.
Okay. Councillor Arlott.
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well. How many car park spaces are there for the 9 apartments? And please don't tell me that apartments don't have car park spaces.
Well, the existing car park, the existing spaces, well, there's 4 units that already exist. They don't have any car parking at all. And the new spaces, the new 8 units or 9 units, no, they don't. It's a car-free scheme. Mark, would you like to address that in terms of the highways comments?
When it's time to ask me a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, your officers have looked at it and, you know, they've commented and they agree that it meets policy. So.
We'll see.
Well, just to say, if ever there was a location where arguably you don't need car parking, this is it.
Amy's working hard on that front.
Yeah.
If there's no more questions, then I'll let you go, Neil. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I am the ward councillor. I'm not going to speak as a ward councillor. I'll speak in debate if you don't mind. Yeah.
I'd like to propose.
Well, we need to go back to.
Sorry.
Sorry, don't ask me questions. It's fine.
Yeah. Could I ask?
Yes.
Mark, could you just remind us what the housing mix is and how they be allocated, what tenure they'll have?
In my report, which
There's
a quite a big car park in the report about
8 2-bedroom flats and 1 1-bedroom flat.
Yeah.
And are those include the 4 that are to be retained from existing?
No, so they're
those are
just
new.
pre-existing. Yeah. So these
So
are
it's 9.
9 new ones, yes, proposed.
So does that mean we don't they don't need to provide any affordable housing. So they're all just commercial.
In the report, I talk about how the sort of housing needs survey as part of the plan as well is brought together and sort of identify the need for smaller units.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Arlott.
Yeah, car parking. The SABC car park at the rear, what is the maximum hours you can park there for? Is it simply 10 where you can only park for 3 hours?
I could Google it.
No, it's a long term. It's a long stay car park, not a short stay car park.
So people that have the apartments that don't have cars, they can park there all day long.
I think you can park after 6, but it's free anyway.
Yeah, the point I'm making is on a Saturday and a Sunday, can they park there all day long?
I think the point you're making obviously is that you're concerned that there's not enough parking. But obviously, we have to say that the OCC Highways Department was satisfied that it's in this location, as a Councillor Topping has mentioned as well. It's quite a highly sustainable location. There will be cycle storage provision to encourage cycling, but otherwise it's quite a significantly, sustainable location with access to sort of bus routes and all the amenities in the town.
Sorry, Andrea.
Yeah, asked about the amenity space. You mentioned in your report that each property will have a balcony.
Yes.
And then there's some outdoor, some sort of communal space, but the policy requirements for amenity space are.
It's a little bit different. I mean, it's a town centre location, flats. The balconies, are welcomed, but obviously we're aware of local areas that they could use should they wish to stretch legs or go for a walk and stuff. They won't have
So, but in terms of policy around amenity space, this is compliant.
I think we have to be reasonable in the assessment that they are flats rather than individual houses, but they wouldn't have individual gardens. I'm happy with that.
Yes.
Sorry, got an answer on that. Was it maximum 3 hours stay? Is that right? Is that what I'm reading? Yeah. For the parking. Sorry. That's not. Nothing after 6. No charges by after 6 PM.
Maximum 3 hours on the car park charges.
So where do the people park? If they can only park there for 3 hours.
You don't have cars.
3 hours, and no charges apply after. Charges only apply 8 AM to 6 PM as a standard within it.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm losing track. Gas Sabbath.
Okay. Just about parking again. If there's a nil allocation for specific residents in that neighbourhood, is it not right that they'll just park somewhere else in somebody else's street and walk there? So we're not really saying it's car free, are we? We're not really saying it's really.
Well, we can never guarantee that, and it's difficult for us in planning to make a decision to judge the behaviour of people. What we need to consider is the base fact that it's a very sustainable location. Our requirements or OCC's requirements for.
And how is sustain a sustainable location if there's only a bus service? There is no railway station there. It's got fairly limited transport.
It's also sustainable in the sense that it has all the amenities and stuff that you could get if you lived in there. So all the shops nearby, you could get all your sort of convenience goods without having to use a car. So almost self-sufficient if you wish.
The bus is every 15 minutes. 2 hours behind Oxford. More than 15 minutes to Oxford. 400 probably now.
I see there's a button that goes to the train station.
Sorry, Councillor Back.
Just quick. The comments were that the car park at the back is mainly EV anyway, and it's rubbish, and not very happy. I noticed the bus stop's right outside. Provision for cycle parking. I think there's a comment in there. So there's a good provision for cycle parking.
Yes, they've got their own individual sort of lock-up area on that and separate to the bins area. So yeah.
Can I just ask who will maintain these shared amenity space? Who's in charge of that?
I'm not sure. Personally, it might be a question best asked for that. But I assume it goes with the land and sort of any legal conveyance of that. Oh, I'm not sure if you're allowed to talk. Sorry.
No, unfortunately, you can't now. Right. Is there anybody else wants to talk? Yeah,
Oh,
Councillor.
listen, actually, let's check the national census. 25% of the households in this area have no car or van.
25%.
Which is sorry,
Did you say 25%?
25%.
I mean, 75%.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, but that's of households. Of people.
No, that's households.
Yeah, choice you make when you buy it.
Sorry, let's sort of got. Does anybody else wish to ask questions of the officer?
Well, just a comment on that point, just to further what Peter said. It's quite usual for younger people. I have 3 children in their 30s, none of them own a car. And it is usual, it's becoming more usual, and we should do everything to encourage it, in my view, particularly in the town centres. There's absolutely no need whatsoever to provide car parking here. The vast majority of people in London, in central-ish London, do not have a car. One of my daughters lives in Oxford. She does not have a car. She doesn't need one. Most younger people.
It's going to turn into a question.
Questions?
Yeah,
One question. Let's move off that because we seem to have gone past that. I need a resolution, a proposal for a resolution. Councillor Gordon-Creed.
I propose we go with the officer's recommendation on this. I think as a development in the middle of town, it's done incredibly well and it's incredibly needed. And I think it will be an asset to the high street. Yeah.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Yes. Councillor Topping, thank you much for speaking now.
Yep, may as well. I think it's a great scheme. It will improve the look of the immediate area, provides additional very sustainable residential. It will provide retail that's got a good chance of letting and getting some activity on the high street, but also on the side alleyway. I think it'll improve the look of that part of town. I can see absolutely 0 negatives with it. It gets my 100% support.
Yeah, I'll say, just hang on.
Just check the recommendation.
Yeah, can I just check you're happy to accept the amendment to condition 15 as part of your motion? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
I agree with Councillor Topping's question earlier, and it's nice to come back from my first planning meeting for a while and disagree with my colleague to my left.
Which one? This one?
No, you.
Oh, sorry.
I just said I 100% agree with Councillor Topping.
Oh, sorry.
The County Council's policy, Highway Authority, is to reduce the number of car trips by a quarter by 2030. If we just continually put car spaces with every new development that we have, then we haven't got catch up and hell of mean that. As Councillor Topping said, there isn't a more sustainable location, other than the centre of Oxford or next to a train station potentially. But you could go to the swimming pool by walking. You could live a very nice life here. And the concerns that Councillor Sadler's has about cars, it's true. If you wanted to own a car and put it miles away from your house, what you'll find over time is it's not very functional because you go shopping and then you have to go drop off your stuff in the car park and take your car somewhere else and come back. It quickly realised that actually you can rent a car, and what we ought to do is in the car park behind the thing have a few hire cars, electric hire cars which people can use on an ad hoc basis. It's about designing infrastructure so that we don't become car dependent dormitories. And if we did that, then these people could thrive and flourish even better. So, but we won't build that infrastructure if there aren't people demanding it. So until we put in developments like this and get the electorate who want to see good cycling infrastructure, quality bus services, and charge hired cars, then that kind of stuff won't happen. It will all be people complaining about potholes, and we need to stop.
Thank you, Councillor Bearden. I see anybody else wishes to speak in debate. Councillor Sadler.
No.
And Councillor Powell.
No, I mean, really, just to say, I completely agree. I think this is a fantastic scheme. I thought when you look at the pictures of what the Town High Street looked like now, what it would be replacing, it's a substantial, significant improvement. I think the provision of smaller properties, town centre properties, is exactly the kind of scheme we should be supporting. So I'm very, very happy to support it.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, so I think it's in terms of what's being shown, it does look very good. I think it's great that we're having residential properties in the middle of the town, and it is a stable location in that respect. But I would say, in terms of sustainable locations, it isn't the centre of Oxford and it isn't the centre of London. It's Tame, and you are. What I really don't like is the idea that
Thames without offending the people of Tame.
One person wants to.
So what I really don't like is the idea that developers are just deciding that certain people don't need a car, that they can live there without the use of a car. And I do accept as a Liberal Democrat, I do accept the Liberal Democrat green view that we need to stop doing this. We need to have more sustainable locations. I totally accept that. But we shouldn't do it like that, and we shouldn't decide that certain young people don't need cars anymore. We should decide. It should be there as an option, and try and encourage people on better behaviours in a different way.
Yeah, I said I want to speak with local member. I as a town councillor, I followed this planning application thoroughly. That they have talked to the town council, they've discussed it, they've presented numerous times. I haven't been there. I've stayed away from it for that particular reason. But I do talk to the councillors and say, what do you think about it? The one thing that's never come up is parking. Never been an issue. I can think that about 10 years ago we had a development in town, and there was a huge controversy because it was car free. Yeah, and all the arguments about where's your car parking. But that development went through, people live in it, and there's no issues. Yeah. We do have issues in town with car parking, but the people that are going to go in there know that there's no parking, so they go into that property knowing that there isn't a car parking issue, or there is a car parking issue. They can't park the car, so they're not going to go in there and say, "Where do I park my Mercedes?" They're not going to be able to do so. Yeah, and they know that. That's the issue. And the town council are more than happy with this. I think it's the right thing to do. Yeah. Okay. Who proposed it now? You've summed up.
Me.
You've proposed it. Is there anybody else wishes to speak?
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Dragon.
Yes. Everybody seems to think that the current building there is ugly and awful and should never.
It's horrible.
And it's horrible. And yet it was only built in 1966. And I'm sure at the time everyone said, oh, some people said it's horrible and ugly, we should never build it. Other people said, oh, it's sort of modern and dynamic. But so I think it's important to always look critically at these schemes that get foisted on towns and put on by developers who say all these lovely words about it's forward-looking and dynamic and it's modern, and really they're rubbish. And of course, years later, everyone realises that. So I would say to our committee, never be afraid to turn down ugly schemes when you think they're ugly.
Okay. We'll go back then to Councillor Gordon Creed to sum up.
And I think everything pretty much has been said in terms of the content and why. So I think this is a very good proposal. I think it's very needed. It fits with our local plan. It fits with what the consultations. So yeah.
Okay, so we have a proposal. Proposal seconded for acceptance. Yeah. I'll say for refusal from a minute ago. Yeah, for acceptance in accordance with the officer's recommendations. All those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Against? 2. Okay, so that is passed. Thank you, committee. Thank you, Mark. We always do something. I'll leave the news.
Yeah, it's hard as
Right, so we're ready to move on. Okay, so we move on to agenda item 9, 4 Horseshoes, Checkendon. Planning officer is Paul Lucas and he's online.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Good.
You only see your head. You only see your head, so we're not too sure. It's hold the whole of you or just.
Thank you, Chair. There are 2 applications. One of these seeks full planning permission for change of use of a vacant public house into a dwelling and erection of a detached dwelling and carport and formation of vehicular accesses on Main Street and Deers Lane. The other application seeks listed building consent for the works required to facilitate the conversion of the listed building. The description of the development at the top of the report has been corrected on the council's website to remove the reference to the garage originally proposed to serve plot 1 that's been deleted from the current plans and to include reference to the carport serving plot 2. These changes would be reflected on any decision notice issued by the council, which would describe the planning application and listed building proposals as set out at section 2.1 of the report. Your officers consider that the property remains unviable as a community facility due to the extant partial residential conversion and previous decision to accept total residential conversion. As discussed at paragraphs 7.3 and 7.4 of the report, the residential conversion is acceptable in policy terms. Your officers consider that the principle of development in relation to the infilling with a new build dwelling is supported in principle in this settlement and within the conservation area by local plan policy H16, as discussed at paragraphs 7.5 to 7.9 of the report. The works to facilitate the conversion of the listed building into 2 plots incorporate a glazed link to a renovated outbuilding, demolition of later additions, some new windows and internal alterations. Sorry, it's a single plot. The council's conservation officer considers at paragraph 7.11 that these works to the historic structure would not harm the significance of the listed building or the character and appearance of the conservation area. The conservation officer considers that the new build dwelling and carport would result in some harm, as discussed at paragraph 7.12 to 7.14 of the report, but this would be at the lower end of the scale of less than substantial harm, given the very localised impact within the wider area. Your officers consider that the elements involved in the conversion would give rise to limited changes to established built form. The new build dwelling and carport would be a more significant change, but its position would lie within a line of existing buildings and would be of a scale and design that would reflect the local vernacular. As outlined in paragraph 7.17 of the report, your officers consider that the landscape setting of this part of the settlement within the Chilterns National Landscape would be conserved. Your officers consider that the interrelationship between the proposed plots and the neighbours would be acceptable in respect of light, outlook and privacy. In the expert opinion of the local highway authority, the proposed access and parking arrangements would not give rise to conditions prejudicial to highway and pedestrian safety in compliance with local plan policy Trans 5. Matters relating to tree and hedge protection, protected species, biodiversity net gain, drainage, carbon reduction and external lighting could be dealt with through the recommended conditions. NPPF paragraph 215 explains that where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use. In this instance, the primary public benefit would be securing a viable use for the listed building that would maintain its special historic and architectural interest for the benefit of future generations. In officers' view, this carries significant weight. There would also be a public benefit from the contribution that the provision of 2 dwellings, the conversion and the new build, in a settlement identified as suitable for small-scale infill development would make towards the district's housing supply. Your officers consider that cumulatively, these public benefits would be sufficient to outweigh the low level of less than substantial harm arising from the proposed development as identified by a heritage officer. Your officers consider that the planning and listed building consent applications would comply with the relevant development plan policies, and on that basis, it is recommended that planning permission and listed building consent are granted.
Thank you, Paul. If you hang around, we'll come back to you, I'm sure, later on. Okay, I have 2 speakers. The first one is a representative from Checkendon Parish Council. Tom Corbishley, are you here? Yes.
There you go. Mr. Chairman, Planning Committee. In response to a very similar application that was refused on the 28th of June 2023, I want to again concentrate my comments on the preservation and protection of the Checkendon Conservation Area. There's been another strong public response to this application by way of objections. Community feeling is high on a repeated attempt to develop the site, and I'm sure councillors will want to take that into account. The revised scheme is for a large 4-bedroom house and garage, and we think it's larger, in fact, than the 2023 application, and virtually the same size as the old pub. It's identical in principle, if not in detail, to the 2023 application. Every single member of this planning committee voted against the 2023 application. If you drive into the centre of Checkendon, the centre of our conservation area at this moment, you'll see a cluster of just 9 residences of historical importance which are visible, some dating from the mid-15th century. We also have a 900-year-old Norman church, a mid-Victorian forge, 1840s school, plus an attractive flint and brick village hall built in the arts and crafts style. Just one new house has been built in the centre in the last few years, which is relatively unobtrusive. So our conservation area has remained largely unchanged for over 1 century, and certainly since its inception as a conservation area. This protection has worked well to our expectations and so far fulfilled its purpose. It's easy to erode and damage such a fine conservation area by incremental development. When we consider the entire site at Four Horseshoes, then we see significant changes to this situation. 2 new houses have already been approved in the back garden area, not part of the current application, but part of the very same site. The parish council and others did not like this, although these houses are behind the old pub. The development does not constitute a degree of incremental, a large degree of incremental harm to our conservation area. In the application under consideration, we now see 2 further residences planned, making 4 houses on the same site where 1 pub once stood. I stress that the parish council, however, certainly does not object to the conversion of the original old pub building into 1 residence under application P24 S3357LB. We supported the change of use from commercial to residential some years ago, as we appreciated it was not viable as a business. We, and clearly many of the residents of Checkendon, do, however, object very strongly to a repeated attempt to erect a new house at the front of the plot. This is very prominent in the conservation area and harms it greatly, in our opinion. The structure is highly visible from the approach along Deers Lane and Main Street from both directions. A modern house will always look like a modern house, no matter how it may be dressed up. It will always dressed up with traditional materials, flint panels, oak boarding, etc. Modern houses have a garage and a large driveway and simply never fit alongside period homes. This corner site was always an open area within the conservation area, and we don't believe there's any question that this is infill in such a large site. Last time I was here, I quoted the now King Charles when he was Prince Charles at this meeting, repeating his famous carbuncle phrase. A modern house amongst our village centre period houses would indeed be a carbuncle. We see plenty of opportunity to add houses in this village, but outside the conservation area, and this is usually done when 60s built bungalows on large sites change hands. We are unashamedly protective of our old village centre and consider the planning department are again mistaken to recommend approval for this 1 new house that will permanently harm it. There's much emphasis in planning literature and local planning to take account of local feeling. There's much emphasis in many other areas of local government to listen to public opinion too. We hope that committee members will appreciate the feelings of the community with this in mind. Our intention is not to have the application dismissed, but only that it is amended to renew the new build at the front of the site.
Thank you, Mr. Corwishly. That's your 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, stay there, put them in with questions, I'm sure. Councillor Sadler.
Yes, I remember the last time it came to the committee, and I think I brought it up at the time, but there's the house immediately opposite on Deers Lane, which is relatively new, isn't it? It is relatively modern.
It is.
And also there's this problem that the sort of built area of Checkenden going down, you've got that new house on Deers Lane, but then you've got that gap, then you've got this rather derelict looking building. Wouldn't you agree that it doesn't actually affect the kind of conservation area, the sort of nub of the centre? It doesn't really affect that in quite.
Well, it's easy to erode a conservation area incrementally. You can in small parts, and I say a modern house is a modern house, and it will grate amongst the period houses. The new one that was built is a very small house and pretty unobtrusive.
Any other questions, Councillor Powell?
Yes. Sorry, I'm new on the committee, so I wasn't at the last discussion. You mentioned earlier, and I was looking through the planning history of the site about the other two properties, the two semi-detached houses that have previously been approved. Have they started to construct those houses?
They've not been built. Time has expired on them. They'll have to renew, but we expect they will be built.
So right, okay, that was the question, whether the time had expired, so it has to be.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Corwishly. Thank you for your time. Next speaker is Sean Tanner, who's a supporter.
Members, thank you for allowing us the
You
time.
have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
This application before you has a recommendation for approval. This is a repeat of the recommendation back in June 2023. At the time, the local ward member and parish member suggested no additional dwelling should be built on the car park, but that the design of the new dwelling needed to be very special so as to enhance the conservation area. The design of the previously proposed dwelling was classified as an anywhere house by the committee. STL architecture was instructed by the applicant and went back to the drawing board. There are a number of significant differences between the previous application and the proposal before you today. Whether that constitutes special is subjective, although the design has been heavily influenced by themes from the Checkenden conservation area. My intention this evening is to explain the design members the difference between the previous application and this one before you. Foundry House is in the heart of the village and is a great asset to the conservation area along with multiple dwellings. The design before you today reflects the vernacular of Foundry House. The proposed dwelling faces Main Street with low eaves height and 3 symmetrical dormers with a low roof line. Below is a traditional gable-fronted porch. To the east, facing Deers Lane, a feature brick chimney and leaded oriel window interject with a brick and flint facade. The main element of the proposed dwelling is wholly brick and flint facing onto Deers Lane and Main Street. The roof tiles will be handmade clay tiles and the joinery will be bespoke traditional casements. To add interest to the design, an oak-boarded single-storey element is included to reflect the rural character. We've produced 2 street scenes from both Deers Lane and Main Street. There's now more space between the Grade 2 asset and the proposed dwelling. The main facade facing Main Street has been significantly reduced in scale and the layout of the proposed dwelling is L-shaped, concealing some of the accommodation. There is a clear division within the site that is not apparent on visiting, namely the private pedestrian right-of-way that runs from the corner of the junction of Deers Lane and Main Street, diagonally to the rear of the detached timber outbuilding behind the Grade 2 asset. This cuts through and divides the sites into separate plots. This can be clearly seen on the proposed site plan, where a native hedge and screen planting is illustrated running adjacent to the right-of-way. Based on this, the proposed dwelling has been set further away from the heritage asset towards the southeast. This in turn creates a larger gap between buildings. This increase in space allows a better view of the heritage asset when travelling west along Main Street. All 20th century flat roof additions, with regards to the heritage asset, we have a vast amount of experience in working with listed buildings. We therefore decided the conservation of the listed building would be better served if it remained as one dwelling. All 20th century flat roof additions will be removed. Thatched roof will be retained, although repaired, and all of the materials will be replaced like for like. There will be no significant extensions to dilute the historic fabric of the Grade 2 asset. On this basis and the reduction in massing of the new dwelling, the setting of the heritage asset will not be compromised, as confirmed by the heritage officer. A great deal of time has been spent considering the fine detail and the effect this proposal will have on the conservation area. We reached out to the parish and ward members at the start, only to be told by the parish they would never support an additional dwelling in this location. We hope that we can gain your support for a much improved and more sensitive proposal, taking into account the concise recommendation from both the planning and conservation officers. The design is much improved and now reflects the themes of the Checkendon conservation area. While the density of development has been reduced to 2 dwellings, your support will bring an appropriately designed new dwelling to a long derelict site and safeguard the future of the listed building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee has any questions? Yes, Councillor.
Could you clarify? There's some confusion about whether the planning consent for these or the two dwellings on the site, whether it really means is that completely informed? We're not going to have 4 dwellings on this site.
No, the listed building, the consent for the listed building didn't grant planning permission.
Yes.
Over all applications, so it's only half the proof. For the works, the listed building previously was converted to 2 dwellings.
Right.
There are no other dwellings. We're now gone from 2, from the conversion down to 1, to retain the fabric of the listed building, and then added the extra property.
We'll just end up with
just two properties, yes.
Okay, I see no further questions, so thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks very much.
No ward councillors present. Therefore, we'll go back to the planning officer. Questions for the planning officer? Anybody got a question for the planning officer?
I'm slightly intrigued by these other 2 properties. I know there's not part of this application. Is that a completely separate?
That's a separate application.
Developer, separate developer. It was in the grounds of the pub. So
it's in the original grounds of the pub,
but that was
not in the current grounds of the pub.
Okay, so that's not relevant.
Within planning, you have a red line often and a blue line, and you've got to look at the red line, which is the site.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get that.
Nothing outside that site.
It was just querying the picture me slightly.
Yeah, I know that
the previous
the parish council trying to bring them in, and it's not relevant to this application.
Yeah. Can I just check also that the is a plot, so they don't have any objection to the house.
Who's they? Sorry.
Oh, the parish.
The parish council.
But they want no house in plot 2.
They seem to want no building whatsoever anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, they don't object to convert to the
converting the front because it's there.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to. So it's plot 2.
With questions to
Paul, is it
Paul,
plot? Is it plot 2 that is the?
Yeah, plot 2 is the new build, and that is the element of this proposal that the parish council have an issue with. So that is only covered by the planning application because the listed building consent. This building consent isn't required to build that plot.
Thank you.
Councillor Sadler.
Yeah. So I was just looking at the plan as shown on slide 141 against slide 142, where you've got a drawn plan, and in front of plot 3, that looks like a parking area, whereas on slide 141, that looks like it's garden for plot 2. Could you just clarify what's?
There is no plot 3, is there?
Plot 2. Plot. Sorry, I'm still talking about the same thing. So the proposed building, it says plot 3 on the second one. It does say plot 3, but it's irrelevant. That little outline drawing there in front of that is a kind of
they're not very.
That's the previous one.
I think that's the withdrawn scheme.
Okay, right. So
screen now.
So this, okay, right, sorry.
That's the old one.
So I withdraw it. Thank you.
Right, sorry, any further questions? Councillor Topping.
It's directed to Paul. Would it be possible to see any artist impressions of the new buildings that are better quality than I have on my screen, which I find quite difficult to.
Well, yeah,
yeah, but it's. Is there anything that is more visually instructive as to what this new building is going to look like, in particular the new building?
Yes, that's it.
That's it.
So that's helpful.
That's the
Thank
street
you.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, northwest is what you're going to see from the road.
The northwest main street is the facing the front, and then side northeast is Deers Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the road you will see face on. Yeah. Right, we're still on with questions for the officer. I can't see there are many.
Yes, can I just ask to just actually confirm that at the end of the day, we're only checking in. It's only going to get 2 dwellings on this site, or checking is only be 2 new houses. One of which is the conversion of the pub, and the second one is this new build. And that's there's nothing off-site on that plan. We're not sitting in that white area that's going to be built.
If there is, then we can't consider it.
No, I'm just trying to get an understanding what the situation is.
We can't consider that, Peter.
There's nothing else proposed as part of this application.
As part of this application, there's nothing else proposed.
Nothing else proposed.
Right, okay. No further questions for it. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rich. Now we need to cut. No more councillors, so I need a proposal. Councillor Topping.
I propose supporting the officer's recommendation on the basis that I see this as a balance. I see a great deal of benefit in the listed building being retained as a single unit. I think that's really important to the integrity of that building and might enable in the future its potential, who knows, in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years time to revert back to a pub or some other use with its integrity protected. I think that's massively important. If what is required to make that viable, this is a building that's been empty for 12 years, it's in a terrible state. I cannot believe that the condition of that building isn't having a negative effect on its structural integrity and also the look of the conservation area. So I cannot believe that restoring it as a single home isn't going to be anything than hugely beneficial. And if the balance to get that achieved is that we have to have a new house next to it, then I am in support of that for those reasons.
Right, is that seconded? Councillor MacDonald.
I'll be brief. I think Councillor Topping managed to summarise that very eloquently. I do like the fact that they're considering traditional construction, like the flint work and so on, to try and minimise its look amongst the other heritage buildings.
Okay, thank you. Open debates. Is there any debates? Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, I'm sort of. I'm going to agree with Councillor Topping. Really, my memory of the original application there was quite congested and really not suitable for that site. I remember. I can't quite remember, but it does look like they have put some care in. And it sits nicely within the building line, I hear what Checkerman are saying, but I think actually, hopefully, we'll just put an end to that argument, and it will come to terms with it. because I think actually what they're proposing does look quite good.
Anybody else? Councillor Arnott?
Yes, Chairman, we did have a site visit there, was it last year or the year before? And
in 2023.
I really do wish the builder all the best if he can put the old pub back together, because it was absolutely derelict. It was awful. So I think if they can resurrect that building to similar to what it was when it was built, I think we should congratulate them. And I think, you know, just putting an extra one house there, we've cut it down from 3 to 2. I don't really think there's any way we can go any farther. So I think to accept that, and it's a big plot, it's an infill plot. So I'd fully support that.
Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Topping to sum up.
I agree with all the comments that have been made. I think this is a beneficial application that, if carried out properly, and I'm very hopeful that it will be, that it will result in saving a listed building for the longer term. And as Peter pointed out on a previous application, modern buildings don't always last very long. Sometimes they're knocked down within 50 years. Older buildings, listed buildings, can go on for hundreds of years. And I think that a proper restoration of that building is by far the most important thing on this site and should take precedence, and therefore should be supported.
Thank you, Councillor Topping. Okay, we have a resolution for approval. I propose and seconded. All those in favour of approval, please show. It's nearly unanimous. Those against? One abstention. Thank you, Peter. Oh, sorry. We need to go on the listed building one as well. Yeah. So again, we propose to second it. All those in favour? Thank you. All right, so that's approved as well. Right, sorry, I forgot about that. Maybe we should have done that first. All right, we'll go on to, I'm going to go get some water.
Yeah,
We'll start back on agenda item 10, which is Anderson House, Newtown, Henley on Kent, David Holmes. Sorry, no. So the planning officer is Tom Wyatt. Saw you online as well, Tom.
Online?
Driving the
Oh, I am online. I'm here as well.
We're in two places at once.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located within the Reading Road industrial area of Henley. Following the grant of planning permission in 2021, the site has been redeveloped to provide 43 flats and a ground floor commercial space of 220 square metres. The application now seeks planning permission to convert the commercial space to 3 additional flats. On the plan there, just towards the bottom, you can just see a large open space, and that's the in the floor plan. That's the commercial space that has been provided. As you can see there, they want to subdivide it now to put 3 flats in. The elevations, so the front elevation facing Newtown Road, ground floor, you can see lots of big windows. That's the commercial space as built out. And now they just want to fill in a bit of the windows as part of the residential conversion. So there would be no increase in the floor area as a result of the conversion, and the only external manifestation of the residential use would be, as you see on the screen, would be the provision of small terraced areas and a reduction in the glazed areas on the frontage of the building. The relevant neighbourhood plan policy seeks to encourage employment uses within the Reading Road industrial area, but does not specifically prohibit the change of use to alternative uses such as residential. Policy EMP3 of the South Oxfordshire local plan seeks to retain employment land, but not where its continued employment use is unrealistic, and the policy allows for a change of use where the site has been marketed without success for employment uses for at least a year. In this case, the site has been marketed since March 2024 with very limited interest and no active employment use has been pursued. As such, officers consider that the requirements of policy EMP3 have been discharged and that a residential use of the site is now appropriate, particularly having regard to the existing residential use of the wider site, the shortfall of the district's housing supply, and that the proposed units would be provided as shared ownership affordable housing units. Some photos, so you can see that the scheme has been built out. Commercial areas where the blue vinyls are in the windows. This is the block at the rear of the site. That's the same block. So the application is recommended for approval as set out in the report.
We have a speaker, which is Chris Keane. No, it's not. It's David Holmes. All right. You have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair, members. By way of an introduction, I am David Holmes and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants in support of the application. Thanks to Tom's detailed report and introduction, I can keep this brief. First and foremost, I wanted to provide reassurance that the requirements of policy EMP3 have been met. The agents actively marketed the site for a sustained period of time to a wide range of potential occupiers. It is an unfortunate reality that this yielded no success. Driven by the lack of interest, the applicants were faced with the conundrum of what to use the unit for. In this respect, the provision of 3 new homes was considered to result in the most beneficial use. The council have confirmed that they cannot show a 5-year supply of housing. The proposal will provide a moderate addition of 3 dwellings to the supply. However, and perhaps more important, all the dwellings proposed will be affordable. However, I asked members look beyond numbers and housing land supply considerations. The benefits that affordable housing brings are numerous. The dwellings, being shared ownership, provide a gateway for those that cannot access traditional open market housing, bridging the affordability gap which has been compounded by interest rates. Members can be assured that if planning permission is forthcoming, the new homes will be delivered as affordable. Howarth Homes and contractors specialise in the delivery of affordable housing and have over 800 new affordable homes under construction in London and the South East. Overall, we support the author's recommendation for approval and conclude that the delivery of 3 affordable homes mitigates the loss of the commercial units that has not attracted any attention from the market. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Arlott.
Could I ask who the agent was that advertised the 3 units for commercial use?
Certainly, it was Angle Land and Development. They're based up in Hertfordshire, but they are commercial land agents.
Could I ask why you didn't legally use the local agent, Simmons and Sons?
Just purely because we retained Angle Land and Development for a lot of our development work. We operate across London and the South East, and we find them to be reliable.
Obviously, they weren't this time.
They were indeed. They tested the market for us.
Can I ask a couple more questions, Chairman?
Yes, go on. One more.
On the when all this came about, it was a couple of years ago when you granted planning permission. Sure. Newtown Road is an industrial estate, and that was an industrial building.
Sure.
And the argument was put forward on the affordable housing that obviously it made it non-viable.
Sure.
If you had built the 40% affordable. So I believe that you put 8 forward for shared ownership. Would the developer accept if I was to support it, that they would go for truly affordable and social housing on these proposed 3 units rather than shared ownership?
Sure. There's a couple of things to break down on that. First and foremost, we weren't responsible for securing the host planning permission. We weren't involved in that, but we subsequently got involved in the purchase of the site with the planning permission in place. In regards to the social rented element or the affordable rented element, it's not something that we could accept. We believe the application as submitted is robust, noting Tom's comments in his report as well. The application is for less than 10 units. The rest of the units have been completed and are either occupied or in the process of being occupied. So on paper, there could be an argument that we didn't have to provide any affordable housing at all. However, the developers do see the merit in shared ownership units. And to be frank, the market conditions at the time dictate that that's the best option for them and for the council in terms of meeting affordable housing needs.
That's fine. Thank you. Councillor Beard, do you have a question?
No.
No, you do have.
For Tom.
Councillor Tom.
Just a further question on the marketing that Angle did.
Mm-hmm.
Did they erect to let boards at the property?
I believe so. I wasn't involved in instructing it myself, so I'm not sure. I think that in the marketing report it is detailed. I think there may have been 2 let boards on the property at some point in time. I'm not 100% sure on that.
It's just that from personal experience of actually having been involved as a commercial estate agent in the start of my career,
sure,
they are very effective.
Yeah.
We stick to what's in front of us rather than how to market property, please.
Yes, but isn't that the whole point here, to demonstrate that it had been properly marketed, and therefore, having been properly marketed, if there was no demand for these units, it is justifiable to perhaps look for other uses. That's why I asked it.
What I would say in response to that is the marketing, the ways of marketing property have probably evolved somewhat, and no offence, since the start of your career when you're in commercial property, with things like the Estates Gazette, you can broadcast it to every potential occupier. There is, very simply, it has a much greater market reach.
Yeah, but it's getting it out in the local town that matters,
okay.
And people see the boards.
Okay. Can we stick with the questions, please? And Councillor Powell.
The rest of the development.
Yes.
Those are so we've heard it's not the 40% mix, but there are some houses that are available as affordable housing. Would these new 3 units, if they're approved, would they be managed under the same scheme?
They would indeed, yes. So the same developer, again, not necessarily relevant to the application, but the developer's working with a housing association to manage it. So that there's recognised Metropolitan Thames Valley are helping manage it. From that perspective, they're a recognised housing association.
And they're also managing the site. And
they are indeed. So there's a management company set up. I won't bore you with the details of the money that's involved in it and where it's come from. But there is a framework involved in it, and a management company has been established to manage the properties.
So just a very quick subject. Does that imply? I'm thinking these would be quite quick to deliver.
Yes,
because the fabric is there.
100%, yeah. So it's delivered to a Shed and Core standard, and it was marketed to Shed and Core standard as well. So it could have been fitted out as a commercial unit in the event an occupier was found. Obviously it wasn't, so yeah, they could be converted relatively promptly.
Councillor Gordon Green.
Because I can't enlarge my drawing, the the current habitable space, the residents have balconies, is that right?
They do indeed, yes, yeah.
And I can't tell whether there's any outdoor amenity space on these units.
So there's not. So each of these units are slightly different insofar as they're not accessed from the internal corridor. They've all got their own front door. And I think that was important in terms of providing activation to that frontage.
Yeah. So there's just a narrow strip here.
There's a narrow strip there, but they benefit from the communal gardens that are part of the development with their own play space as well, which has been delivered.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation time. Right, we will do, well, Ken, you're all for council.
I'm fine.
Okay, so we'll go back to questions for the officer. Tom sat there. Councillor Bidder.
What is our current 5-year land supply?
Well, it depends who you ask, shouldn't it? Officially, it's 4.5, I think, on the web. So the annual monitoring report, but I think some inspectors think it's a bit lower, the set turn appeal decisions. So it's below, I mean, the headline is that it's below 5.
And this will help.
It all helps, everything all helps in terms of housing numbers, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I can't see any further questions. I'm looking then for a proposal. Councillor Bidder.
I support it.
We want to propose supporting the opposite recommendation. Okay, is that seconded?
Yes,
yes, you seconded that. Okay, do you wish to speak now or wait to debate?
No, I think it's I don't see any reason not to support it. I think it's providing small properties through small homes for people who need them, and sounds to me as if they've done a fairly robust job of trying to market it. It's a shame, but I think rather than having an empty units, it's better to have.
That's all right.
Yeah, I'm going to speak against this, Chairman. I think this developer has come along personally. I wouldn't say they've got away with murder, but they're pretty well close to it. They built 43 units, and out of that, they've had 8 shared ownership units. There have been no affordable, no social houses at all on that application. And maybe this is the chance for the developer just to give something back to Henley or to SODC and put some affordable houses in there, social houses. There's a much, which we all know, there's a much bigger clientele out there for affordable and social than there is for shared ownership. And I think this just opens the door for a developer within reason to do what they wish to do. So for that one reason alone, Councillor Powell, I won't be supporting the application.
Councillor Dole.
It appears to be the right sort of accommodation in a sustainable area, and similar to comments I've made on previous applications where you have seen commercial property turned into domestic property. That seems to be the way forward, and it makes use of the building to people who maybe can't afford the newer homes that you see around. The shared property is of interest too, although that can be an issue as well. So I'm generally overall in support of the proposal here.
Okay. Any further comments, Councillor Gordon Green?
I think so. There's been a lot of negative feedback about the shared ownership schemes of people really struggling with them. However, there is a lot of need for them. So, I would hope that the current system is running well. And we don't have any power, I don't think, to say we have to provide social housing. So at least the building's being used, as Councillor MacDonald said. And yes, they are getting away with whatever, but it's the nature of developers.
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who would never ever come within the criteria to get social or affordable rental properties. Or equally, they're not in a position to buy a private full-priced unit. I have a number of friends whose children are in shared equity or shared ownership units who would never otherwise be able to own a property. I believe that they serve a very useful purpose for those that are in between the ability to buy and those that would get on the housing waiting list. And not many units are provided for their benefit. So this is an opportunity, as I see it, to plug that gap.
Okay, talked it through. I agree with Councillor Arlott. I think it's a shame it could have gone better. Right, where are we going? I forget who.
Can I get summarised?
I forget who proposed it now. So I'll come back to you to sum up.
So yeah, there's clearly suspicion against with some of my colleagues that, like, as Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy said, it was on display in the bottom of a locked filing cabinet stuck in a disused lavatory with a sign outside the door saying "Beware the leopard." maybe not, but the fact is that it's it's going to complete the development. We can't have just a disused vacant plots there, and if you can't market it for commercial, then it has to be residential. My only concern about this whole development is that every single flat has one car parking space. Other than that, I think we might as well improve it.
Okay, we have a proposal. Proposal seconded. All those in favour, please shout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 3 against. That is passed. Okay, thank you, committee. We move on. Agenda item number 11. Half Acre Church Lane, Rotherfield, Peppard. Officer Simon. Simon Castle. Simon, we haven't seen you for ages.
I'm relieved you got round to mine.
We're surprised. I'm pleased.
Do we have time to get
Another one.
Yeah, it's only in principle.
That's what.
Come on, Simon, you have the floor.
Right, thank you, Chair. Don't get many permission in principles before committee. This one is here as it was called in by the local ward member. The permission in principle application for the demolition of an existing chalet bungalow in Rotherfield Grays and its replacement with 2 dwellings. Just as a reminder, for this type of application, the council has to consider whether the principle of the proposed development is acceptable with regard to the location, the land use, and the development. If the permission in principle is granted, then a subsequent technical details consent would be required. At that stage, the council would assess the specific site layout, design, form, and scale of the dwellings, along with any other matters that would normally form part of the full planning application. The report before the committee sets out the case for granting permission in principle. However, I will highlight some key points. The site is within Rotherfield Peppard, a settlement where the current development plan supports housing growth through infill and redevelopment schemes. Whilst the site is within the national landscape, it's surrounded by residential land and is within a contiguous line of housing development. In my opinion, there's scope for 2 dwellings to be accommodated, having regard to the size of the site and the general growth of development and the locality. There are trees to the front and rear of the site. They're not protected by TPO or any other planning legislation. There would be factors which might potentially influence layout, drainage and landscaping schemes to be determined at the technical details consent stage. While some respondents to the consultation have commented on the specific layout shown on the applicant's plans, these are entirely indicative at this stage. there are alternative ways that two dwellings could be accommodated rather than the scheme shown indicatively on the right-hand side. To help put this into context, there are a range of house styles, plot widths, forms and finishes along Church Lane. At several points, bungalows sit alongside two-storey properties. The spacing between the dwellings along the road varies, and frontage widths around 8 metres, more than 30 metres. The existing dwelling is not of any architectural or historic interest. In my opinion, it does not make a particularly positive contribution to the street scene or to the wider national landscape. There is scope, I think, for improvements to the appearance of the site. The access arrangement isn't fixed at this stage. However, there is adequate space within the site to accommodate normal parking and turning requirements without needing the dwellings to be set too far back into the site. The noting that the layout, scale and the detachment of the dwellings has not been fixed at this stage, I consider it entirely possible for two dwellings to be accommodated within the site, allowing still for adequate visual separation from the two neighbouring properties to either side. There would also be more than adequate amenity space for the new occupants, well in excess of the design guide standards. And there's some spacing to the side of the bungalow, which could be partly occupied by the new development. So that neighbour on the east, Hunters Hill, didn't raise any objection to the proposal. The neighbour at Longford House to the west did raise some potential issues in terms of light reaching their eastern utility room window, but this doesn't serve primary living accommodation. They didn't also object in principle, I think, to semi-detached properties on the site. The development would inevitably be visible from the neighbouring properties, but this is not in itself a material planning consideration. There's nothing to suggest that there would be any insurmountable neighbouring amenity issue. It's the neighbouring property at Longford House. Even if the development were set further back than the existing building, the relationship could still be broadly consistent with the surrounding housing grade. Technical details application would be considered against the council's adopted design guide recommendations and BRE guidance as appropriate.
Someone from Rutland could go pack out on the side.
I tend to work to escape that. As per the report, I consider that there are no overriding issues rendering the principle of this redevelopment proposal unacceptable in terms of the location, land use, or the amount of development. Accordingly, all the specific details and other matters relevant to planning approval can be appropriately assessed at the technical details and consent stage. Commission principles therefore recommended. It's not possible to add any conditions to this type of application, but the report does highlight some of the technical constraints which would need to be addressed at the next stage the committee minded to approve.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Okay, we have one speaker, Chris Keane. Yep. Okay, Chris, you have your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, all. So it looks like I'm the last man standing. Hopefully it'll be all right. Good evening, all. I'll be reasonably brief. We only took pre-app on this site for two dwellings, the demolition of the affected bungalow on this large residential site. Generally, we've had a positive reaction to this proposal for two suitably designed dwellings. We then wanted to test the water with a more formal application in the form of a PIP, a planning principle. So we could test, basically, could gain more formal advice from the planners and comments from local residents, etc. Again, the PIP provides positive reactions to number suitably designed dwellings again. This, we believe, is a better solution rather than one large dwelling. This would provide more affordable dwellings, family dwellings, than one very large dwelling on the site, or one for one replacement would be very much more expensive I think it provides a better solution. And that's what we're trying to do here. And we hope you will agree with the officer's recommendation and approve the application. And that's why we're here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keane. Committee, any questions? Councillor Topping?
Yeah, the scheme so far that it is an actual scheme that we've been sent looks to me as if there is a slight improvement in the gap between the proposed buildings and Hunter's house, but perhaps a slight reduction in the gap relative to Longford House. My only comment would be, would you consider the two homes being a pair of semis, which would then eliminate obviously the gap between the two buildings and thus allow slightly more space, particularly on the Longford House side?
Yeah, there's pros and cons, really. The pros are you can provide better accommodation because you haven't got the gaps in between the two new dwellings.
Yes.
And just making sure that it works financially. But it's not out of the question. We would consider either two smaller detached dwellings or, if you like, two larger semi-detached, but they will be further away from you.
Yeah, which would improve.
That's right. Yeah.
It's not really relevant.
Sorry, Councillor Topping, just to clarify, the plan that shows it's an illustrative layout. They are not through the PIP. They're not committed in any way to that layout. It's just to demonstrate the feasibility of two plots on that property.
Yeah, but it's the only thing we've got to look at.
It is, but just to bear in mind the PIP process, it can just simply include a red line.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, because
I just wanted to check with the applicant that they would consider a pair of semis if that was the best solution.
Sure. Yes, and that is an option.
And that seems to be the case. Yeah.
I think it's unusual to have this level of application at a very, very high level, a very early stage. It's quite unusual, but there is nothing there. It's just two houses on that site. That's all it's asking for.
We just find it sometimes causes confusion. Due respect to everybody, nobody has no idea what we're put on it, and we put something on there just to show two houses will fit.
I think it's useful to see that you're considering two side-by-side houses as opposed to big houses one behind the other.
No, I don't think
that's useful to know that, but that it's not what you're requesting. So no. We've got to really restrict ourselves. Are we content that there are two houses on that site? Yeah, and that's as far as it goes. So, Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, I almost cringe when you said that two on there would make them more affordable.
I thought not affordable as affordable. More affordable. If you'd have thinking one as what it's going to be worth as two, more affordable, not. Less affordable. How about that?
I know the lane very well.
Yeah, but we try.
I'll cease the question there.
Are there any further questions to Mr. Keane? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Is there any debate on this? Is there any?
Can I just ask one question? The officer. What was the reason for calling?
You'd have to ask.
I don't have the calling email on me, but it was broadly in. Tom might have it. It was broadly in line with the parish council's objection that they didn't think. I thought it was a potential overdevelopment of the site.
So overdevelopment was the issue.
It's a worry. It is a worry. It doesn't actually say. So overdevelopment is a worry, but I think we've a little bit of assurance that it's not going to be overdeveloped. So I think we're all aware of that.
That's something that we would get to
look at.
So can we move forward? Can I have a proposal? Yeah.
I propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is that seconded? Seconded. Is there any debate? Councillor.
Yeah, I would say as a previous developer, I think it's absolutely fantastic. But as a member of the planning, I think it kind of destroys or will destroy the area up there where you've got big houses on large plots. And would this be the start? And would all these other ones just follow suit? But I think, there are still people around, I believe, that want big houses on big plots rather than the smaller house on a smaller plot.
Don't let him hear that because it'll go back to one big house on that plot.
But it gives you another property on the 5-year land supply. Which also concerns my neighbour.
Right, if we stop debate, we can go back to sum up. Is there anything up to do?
So
No, okay, we'll go for the vote. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous, so thank you very much. Thank you. We got no steps to look at this year, this time.
No.
No steps to look at.
That's right.
That's two different sessions. I don't know. 10th of September.